Hello and welcome to the bestseller. Hang on a minute.
Got a new
What's
theme
going
tune.
on? We need something a little bit more festive, Mr. Stay. What do you think? All right, let's see if we can work. That's better. There we go. That's the spirit. Hello and welcome to the Christmas special bestseller experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish, and publish your book. I'm Mark DeVoe.
And I am Mark Stay, and a Merry Christmas to you all, and season's greetings, and however you celebrate in the midst of the bleak midwinter. I got up this morning and I said to Claire, "There's a reason we take it easy this time of year. It's dark when you wake up. You get about 3 hours of murk, and then it gets dark again. So yes, let's put some lights on and get festive and cheery and all that kind of stuff." So
absolutely, yeah. And I don't want to make you jealous, Mr. Stay, but over here in Canada, we do actually have a little bit of snow, and apparently it's going to stick around for Christmas. Right. So the kids,
White
that's
Christmas.
Great because that will partially offset the vast amounts of quality street that is currently being eaten in our household. Some things never change. So, Mr. Stay, happy Christmas to you.
Happy Christmas to you, sir. Yes.
For those joining us on the YouTube video, we have indeed brought out our best gear again, Mr. Stay.
Well, this is another hat. This is another hat from Claire. This is a Christmas pudding hat, as you can see. There's and there's a bit of holly there as well. And the t-shirt, keeping with the Star Wars theme from last time, is an AT-AT that looks like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. So, and a traditional Christmas scarf as well. So
folks, we've been promising that we were going to do a bit of a different Christmas special. It's Christmas. Everything changes at Christmas. The world kind of stops. And we've decided today that we're going to do a nostalgic look back to years gone by of favourite things that we got as gifts, or we gave as gifts, and we've put the question out to our audience to find out. And my goodness me, Mark, we've been doing this podcast for 5 years. We put questions out. We put questions out for, like, we're interviewing Michael Connolly. What would you like to ask him? We put out a question to say, like, tell us about your Christmas. Well, like you say, biggest response, absolutely brilliant. So we've got a lot of things to get through today. We're going to be name dropping like crazy. So if you're a fan of the podcast, if you've written and listened out for your name, it'll probably appear at some point. But Mr. Stay, let's just start from the beginning. What is your earliest memory of Christmas?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I think it was a Christmas in Ireland, actually. Yeah, really? We went over to see my grandparents in Ireland, and we went over on the ferry. And it was kind of a scary experience, going on a ferry across the Irish Sea.
The best of times.
And then, just spending time with my grandparents and just having I remember it was actually, this wasn't the first one. This was later, but I do remember being in Ireland when they showed the Star Wars holiday special. And if you're a Star Wars fan, this is by far the worst thing that George Lucas has ever done. Bless George for creating Star Wars, but he's done some terrible things along the way, and this was the worst one. And I remember my granddad kept turning over the TV to the racing because he loved the GGs. Yeah. And Granddad, I want to watch Star Wars. In retrospect, I realised he was doing me a huge favour.
Was this like a made-for-TV thing then? I've never even heard of it.
Oh, mate, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. They and all the stars were in it. Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford was in it, and it had all these weird little sketches and songs. It was interesting. Songs.
Well, it's like Saturday Night Live Star Wars.
Really? Yeah. It was just bizarre, goodness. And it was all around Life Day. They had to go to the Wookiee homeworld because Chewie was celebrating Life Day with his family, and you meet Chewie's family and the kids and everything.
Sounds absolutely awful.
It really is. Carrie Fisher, poor Carrie, who was on something at the time, was singing, not on the same planet as everyone else. Harrison Ford had contractual obligation written all over his face, and a look that was like, I'm going to kill George when I'm through with this. But it had a little animated section, which had the first appearance of Boba Fett. Actually, that
it just shows you you can take a wrong turn and still survive. I mean,
boy, yeah. Really, boy, Lucas said he's had every VHS destroyed, but you can find it on YouTube if you go looking on the dark web.
Oh. I love it. Well,
so how about you? What was your earliest Christmas memory?
Well, so lots of traditions in our family, and I mentioned this I think a couple of years ago in one of our Christmas specials, where I grew up in a European family, my mum being German, and we would always start Christmas celebrations kind of around lunchtime on Christmas Eve, which was amazing because for anyone I never got this in England. Like everyone's like wakes up, unwraps presents, does the Christmas lunch, and like spend all day cooking it and all day then washing it up, and then the rest of the day suffering on the sofa. And it's over and done so quickly. This is my overriding memory of Christmas Day. Is it's done so quickly. So as a kind of a European Christmas, we would start a lot earlier, and having that extra like half a day made so much difference. Not only because we would have like a Christmas kind of family meal, we'd have a fondue around 5 o'clock, which was always a highlight, like just like trying not to set the dining room table aflame with the methylated spirits, but also the fact that we always got to open our presents on Christmas Eve, and so we'd go to midnight mass, and all these friends of mine from school would be at midnight mass, and we'll be laughing. I used to altar serve actually back in the day in a Catholic church, and I'll be up the front, and the church was next door. This is really bad planning. The church was next door to the pub.
No, that's look, I've got Irish Catholic in my family. That's very deliberate. That's no accident.
Especially
priest
on Christmas
is the first
Eve.
one in.
Especially on Christmas Eve, because you could literally, people would come out of the pub when they used to shut still at 11, and they would stagger into church. And as an altar server, it was one of those moments once a year that you had to brace yourself, because you're up at the front, or adorned in this white kind of angelic robe, which I wasn't, by the way, and none of the other altar servers were.
We need photos, Mr. D. Photos on the BXP group.
I don't know if I have a photo.
Don't give me that. They exist. Yeah,
they've all been destroyed with the VHS tapes. But the funniest thing is that this one year, and I'll never forget it. You know when you're in the back of the classroom and you get the giggles, and your shoulders start going, and you know that you're going to get in trouble. Well, imagine doing this midnight mass, okay, in Fetcham in Surrey, was rammed. It was the biggest service. There were people like spilling out, and half of the people, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there were a number of people that had come from the pub, and I kid you not, they'd been in the pub pretty much most of the day. And I remember this one guy, and it just got my funny bone. I was up there trying to look all kind of like, serious and trying to pay attention to what I was meant to be doing and assisting the priest with the communion, whatever. And every single time the congregation went quiet, it's like, let us pray, this bloke at the back would shout, Amen! Amen! At the most inappropriate moments when everything went quiet, it's Amen! Amen! And then the trouble was, there were altar servers on both sides of the I don't know what's called at the top. What did I learn? But you'd be facing your mates from school that were also altar serving, and trying to avoid eye contact, because you knew the minute you did, you'd get the giggles, and then everyone would start laughing in the church as well.
So this fetch from about 1986. It could have been me or someone from my family. It's
If Irish rallies when they came over.
Yeah. If my Uncle Desmond was over, it was almost certainly him.
It was just a car crash every year.
See, we had the very traditional British thing, which is you get up at the crack of dawn on Christmas Day, you open the presents in a frenzy of torn paper, and then you plonk yourself in front of the telly and watch Top of the Pops and a Bond movie. But one particular year. Well, actually, I'm going to save this when we talk about presents later, because there's one particular year that was quite traumatic. But what we do now is quite similar now. But the thing that's been added, what Claire and her family have brought to the tradition, is you go for an afternoon walk around the neighbourhood, look at the Christmas lights, and judge people. That's it's like, oh, look at those. Oh, what are they thinking? Oh.
Why have they got those things projecting on their house?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, of course, in Canada, we like to do it. We like to do it full on over here. Christmas lights, Mark. You would not believe it. I mean, literally, first
the mothership
of December,
from Close Encounters. Yeah.
1st of December, the entire town gets like an electricity surge. as one of my friends, bless him, down the road, he has it's his hobby, and he adds to it every year, and it is literally, you could see it from the moon. I'm not kidding. It's the most thing. I'm sure there've been car crashes outside his house because he lives on a main road and everyone like slows down. One year he even tuned in a frequency on the radio station so you could actually have background music playing to the light show in the front yard. It was quite spectacular. But that's a big thing over here in Canada. I think especially it seems to be a challenge for a lot of people to kind of one up their neighbours as well. I don't know if you see that a lot in the UK as well now. But
you do get houses that look like Blackpool has landed on them. So, or Vegas. Yeah. It's
the scary thing is they also do that at Halloween over here. And there is, I kid you not, a chap down the road that opens his garage and he has an electric chair in the garage. I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
Not real, but it's all got sound effects and it lights up and the kids can go and sit in it. It's very weird. This kind of sounds like a town that would actually be a kind of a central location for a Stephen King novel, as I talk about it to myself. Yeah. But anyway, let's dive in. Go on. There's a lot to get through.
There is. Well, what I think we'll go through our patrons and academates who've sent all this stuff in, and then I think we'll come back to us. We don't want to splurge all of our favourite presents and books up front.
Totally.
So we'll intersperse them through the show today. So, look, it's like opening Christmas presents. Do you want to open one of yours now, Mr. D? And I'll open one of mine, and then we'll go into the guests. So let's go with the first one on your list. What do you want to pick from your list?
The first one on my list has to be the 1980s Beano album.
Brilliant.
The Beano. Now, there's a link here, folks. We're going to try and make this as relevant as possible to a writing podcast. But the Beano literally got me into reading. I was one of those kids that never really... I loved it when the little puffin flyers came around school and you get a Megan Mogg book or something like that. But I fell in love with comics at a very young age, and it was the highlight of my week to run down in my little school shorts before school on a Wednesday morning to Mr. Holidays. That was the name of the newsagents that we had around the corner. And I would always have a Beano on order. But for me, the highlight of the year was the album. Like to get like a hardback book that would be like the equivalent of, 10 comics or something.
Yeah.
And there was just always, I don't know, I can't explain it, but this nostalgic feeling I get when I talk about it. When I was a kid, it was such a huge event in my week. It was so exciting. Yeah. It's that childlike magic that we have and try and hold on to as adults. But for me, the Beano got me into collecting comics. And I still have a ton of them. My sister just emailed me the other day saying, look, what the hell are you going to do with all this stuff? I've got literally Beano albums in her garage. And I'm so sorry, because when we moved country, I didn't bring them with me. But that was my big one. What about you? Did you have a particular one? Do you want to open one of yours and anything kind of related to that?
Just stick with the Beano annual. I mean, I used to get the Beano comic. Will you remember the club, the Dennis the Menace club with the Nasher badge?
Nasher badge.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And it was a great read. Weirdly, a few years ago, I was actually pitching for movies. Basically, the Beano people were saying, "Okay, give us your pitches for movies," and based on any of their properties. So we were sort of pitching a Numbskulls movie and stuff like that. But so it's kind of come full circle. But I did enjoy Beano. For my annual, and I know we've got people talking about annuals later on as well. Mine was the 1986 2000 AD annual, which featured stories with Judge Dredd and a Rogue Trooper and Strontium Dog and stuff like that, which I absolutely adored. But for me, the big story in it, there was a story in there called The Apocalypse War. Which is as terrifying as you'd expect, because Mega City 1 was basically nuked by their equivalent in Russia. And it only showed you one sort of episode of the longer story. So it ended with Mega City 1 being completely annihilated and then finished.
What?
I was like, what the... And I'd missed the story earlier in the year, and I didn't buy back issues. So it was only a couple of years ago. I was in Forbidden Planet going through the old Judge Dredd. I thought, here's the rest of the story. I can actually finish it. It was great because the thing I love most, I really loved 2000 AD. I mean, it was everything about it, was just, I was never a big Marvel Comics fan or DC. For me, it was always 2000 AD and those wonderful drawings and illustrations and just the sense of, otherness about it. It was very British. It was very strange, and it's had a huge influence on my writing. And I remember when we did Robot Overlords at one of the Comic Cons, Pat Mills, one of the co-creators of 2000 AD, sort of introduced us and bigged up our movie. And John and I are kind of nudging each other. This is great. It's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, it means a lot to me. That really, really does.
Do you think that partly influenced your interest in sci-fi and fantasy early on?
Totally.
Was it?
Totally, yeah.
Isn't that interesting when you think about the comics that you read or the kind of things that you get in graphic novels as a kid? Often will kind of develop then what you end up reading and then potentially what you end up writing about.
Well, we'll come to that later as well, because my cousin, who's in the BXP group, he's put a thing in later and we'll talk about that. But this is why I have, you used to get some, when I was a bookseller, you get some parents say, I want him to read proper books, not comics. It's like, no, comics are proper books. Comics are their own art form, have complete value, reading material, particularly for, reluctant readers or whatever, or just, it's something I still read now, still love and enjoy now. They're a fantastic way of storytelling, great pictures, great language in them. I love comics. Absolutely.
I do. I think it's brilliant. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling because your child under the age of like 12, I guess, isn't reading enough.
Any age at all.
Any age, true. But definitely, because I know parents get really concerned about when their kids aren't reading. And I know today is even more of a challenge. We talked about this before, but even more of a challenge with the competition with like 24/7 TV, on-demand streaming, and a little thing called video games and online gaming. I mean, you really have to work hard to try and engage a child in reading. So get them a comic. It was, again, I've done it, and my daughter's into anime, so I've started getting her some manga kind of graphic novels and things like that, just to get her into that, and it's working. Now she's reading, she's onto the full scale novels. So it's a stealth tactic, folks. Do it. It works.
Absolutely works. Yeah.
Right. So let's dive in. Let's take some turns, Mark. I'd like you to pick from our list of one of our listeners who's talked about one of their. So do you go randomly through the list and pick out something
randomly? Well, okay. Well, I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to start with Kerry Oman. Kerry says, I still remember my first short story collection, a gift from my great aunt. It was The Bear Who Liked Hugging People and Other Stories. And it's the unexpected presents I remember the most. The year I got a Shakin' Stevens and Wham LP.
Whoa!
Fantastic. Claire's a big Shaky and Wham fan as well. Yeah.
Green Door. Oh my gosh.
Kerry says, I think they were the first records I owned that didn't have the jukebox centre bit. You remember that? In the singles, you had the little plastic bit that came out. Yeah.
Oh,
and
funny.
This is lovely. She says, I also got a doll's house that my granddad made. I must have been 4 or 5. He made all the furniture too, including a tiny loo roll, and the settee had the same fabric as theirs did.
Whoa!
He died when I was 6, so that's something I really treasured. That is so lovely.
How lovely. I wonder if there was like leftover fabric from the actual settee that was built in the house. That is absolutely
or the settee
genius.
has a little hole in it on the back.
Don't tell grandma. Don't tell grandma. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Kerry, what a brilliant story. Thank you so much. Shakin' Stevens. In fact, you've got me off on a whole thing here. Okay, Shaky. Mark, favourite single or LP or 12-inch that you received growing up? Can you remember what it would have been for Christmas?
Yeah, well, the Now compilations. Now that's what I call music.
Yes.
I think 3 and 4 were the big ones for me.
Oh my gosh!
You can. There are playlists on Apple Music and Spotify that have them in the same order, and of course, it's the order of them. It's the fact that this track follows that track that triggers the memory in your head.
It does, because you listen to them so many times. You already hear, but also you didn't realize at the time how much these were timelining history.
Absolutely,
pop history.
Yeah.
I mean, do they still do them? Are they still up to like now? That's what I call.
App. They have their own app and everything. Yeah, they're up to. They passed 100 quite a while ago.
Well, I just wondered how it worked with.
I
just wondered how it worked with streaming now, because I know that I always remember the adverts on TV. Do you remember the adverts for the compilation albums?
It was the big album.
It was the big album, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they, like I say, they've. I think some of the compilations are on the streaming services, but they have their own app now where you can get all the now compilations on a subscription, and you can. It's that thing, but people do playlists on Spotify and Apple Music, so you could they're all there.
You can kind of replicate it. But here's an interesting one. My very first 7-inch single was Shawaddy Waddy.
Shawaddy Waddy. Oh.
And do you know what? Do you know what was weird? So I went full circle and I got to see them play live at the pinnacle of their career at the Nottingham University Summer Ball. Doesn't get bigger than that, folks.
Rock and roll.
I was 16 and my sister was graduating and she invited me along. I was a bit older actually, but yeah, so that was kind of bonkers. But yeah, the albums and the LPs, something very amazing, but a bit like CDs and books, you kind of knew what you were getting even when they were wrapped up. At least you knew what object you were getting. It was a little bit of a giveaway.
12 inches square, what could that be?
No idea. Placemats.
My first album was, and I bought a replica of it and it's filed away in all my vinyl, but it was one side had the Star Wars soundtrack, not the original soundtrack, but it was done by the LPO, not the LSO. London Symphony did the soundtrack. I think the Philharmonic did this one. And the flip side was bits of Holst's Planets, to educate a young mind. And then a track called Stellar Caprice, which was like this classical digital thing. And again, played that, I played the Star Wars music while playing with my Star Wars figures and wore that out. But I managed to find my kids got me it a few years ago, actually. Yeah,
it's like you had the soundtrack to the game that you were playing, the movie that you created. Again, I mean, you see it all connecting now. This is why we have to go back. I said, there you are making movies. That's incredible, isn't it?
Makes it
brilliant stuff. Right, next on the list, I'm going to pick Kimberly Burke. Kim said, my aunt and uncle loved British fiction. I know Kimberly's from the US, so and would always buy me and my siblings books that they had read and liked. Isn't that brilliant? My favourite books were Enid Blyton Adventure series. Like, who didn't? I mean, that was a mainstay, wasn't it, for us Brits? But I don't know how well Enid Blyton was known over in the US, actually. It's an interesting one. And I still have them prominently displayed on my bookshelf. Enid Blyton. I was completely transported and forgot my little rural town to go to exciting places via these books. And then for crazy, ridiculous 80s throwaway Christmas gifts, one of my favourites was Geo Safari. Interesting. Thoughtfully gifted by my ever educationally focused mum. It was like one of the world's oldest computers that had educational games with hilarious minimal features. It's the thing, man. My favourite setting was the outer space quiz.
When this came in, I did look this up, and there's a YouTube video that's like half an hour long that takes you through Geo Safari, and it was this big yellow lump of plastic that I think you could put different cards into it, and you played different quizzes. So and it was and this video says, I don't know why it's called Geo Safari, because it has nothing to do with geography or safari, but apparently the first version of it did, and it evolved, and you could do all sorts of other themed quizzes. But yeah, it was amazing. It's electronic toys.
Whilst we're on the theme of computers, Mark, there's something in your list that kind of looks like it's not really a computer, but it possibly preceded the word processor. Do you want to tell us about that?
Is that my first typewriter?
It looks like it could be.
Yes, it is. Yes.
This is absolutely amazing.
I've just put a picture up on my social media today. So this is the Petite Super International Child's Typewriter, which I got when I was about 10 years old. And there's a I have a confession to make, because I said to my parents, I demand a typewriter for Christmas, being a spoilt brat that I was. And they got me one, but it was like a child's. It wasn't a proper typewriter, and I threw a wobbly on Christmas Day. I'm not this one, not this one, that one. So they took the wrong one back and got me this. Oh no!
Really?
What a brat!
Yeah, smack your bum.
Exactly. But it was. I tell you what, it was a proper typewriter. It used ribbons, it was such a faff. Anyone who gets nostalgic about typewriters, honestly, just try and use one to write something. But that whole, so what the picture you're looking at there, that bit in the back is the lid. So the lid used to fold over it, and used to be you could carry it around, be a man about town with your little typewriter.
Well, a super international man about town.
Super international. I don't know what. I don't know what makes it super international. Maybe it's the carry hat handle. You know,
I'd
you
love
could
to have been in that marketing meeting. So we got the petite, super
Yes.
international. Oh my gosh.
Petite was they did lots of typewriters for kids and young people. So, but yeah, it's how I learned. Started learning to type on that. Then my dad got a fire damaged BBC-B computer, and that was a bit easier. But yeah, the whole thing of tapping away at the keys, all the spelling mistakes you can throw your hat at, and then the ribbon running out after about 10 pages and having to go to the stationers and get a new ribbon, and then you got the black ink all over your bloody fingers and the ribbon won't line up properly.
That's right, the black ink.
Don't miss any of that whatsoever. But yeah, that was my first typewriter.
Okay, so the next time anyone's computer has a blue screen, the thing doesn't install quite right, just remember the good old days of typing. There's so much to be grateful for in terms of what we have. That is absolutely brilliant, Mark. My dad had an old black typewriter. It was a proper one. And I remember just being fascinated by it. Just like, you just do stupid things, like you put a bit of paper in, you just whack the keys and see how many times you could hit the letter, A or whatever. But it was something about, talk about RSI. I can't even begin to imagine like the amount of strength that you would need to actually work a typewriter. Absolutely bonkers. And to people out there that probably still use them, I bet you there are some people. I was actually reading a book this morning, Linwood Barclay's No Time to Say Goodbye, something like that. I'm just starting it. But in it, he talks about how he uses one of the characters still uses a typewriter because of the nostalgia it gives him. And actually it was quicker than him firing up his computer and loading up Word, and he just needed to type a note for his anyway, excellent stuff. All right, do you want to pick another one from the list, Mr. Stay?
Okay, let's have a look. Let's go with Jackie Kirkham. So this is a short one.
It's a bit of a
so
theme
Jackie
here,
Jackie says it was Enid Blyton books, probably more than any others, that really got me loving reading as a child. I love the adventure books too, and the Famous Five, although I've always found the Secret Seven boring. So yes, I remember. And then following on from that, Jan Carr says the Blue Peter Annual, and my best childhood present was a tin of Caran d'Ache felt pens. I still have the orange one, and it still works over 50 years later. Now, if like me, you were a doodler, the brand Caran d'Ache they were the business, and they still are. They're still really good pens and pencils. So yeah, that's good choice. They're proper posh pencils. Those I like those.
Excellent stuff. Now talking on the theme of favourite books, Jackie Kirkham says, I'm collecting Asterix books, although I can never remember which ones I've got when I actually find any, so probably have multiples. Asterix was definitely a big thing growing up, wasn't it? That Absolutely. Was, again, talking about kind of, it was really a graphic novel more than a comic, I guess, do you think? Or
Well, let's, if we go to the, my cousin wrote in and he said, anything by Raymond Briggs, and that includes the stuff that caused my adulthood anxiety, including When the Wind Blows, which I've just got on Blu-ray actually for my sins. Absolutely brilliant. But yeah, he says Tintin and Asterix 2. After some douchebag borrowed my copies, thankfully a good friend was able to restore my Asterix collection. The Tintin collection, I'm building it back up. And Chris is my cousin, and I used to go over for the summer, and me and him and my other cousin Nick, we'd sit and read Asterix and Tintin all day. Basically, Brilliant. It was, and Great Asterix. Days. I learned Latin from Asterix. I learned about ancient history from Asterix.
Probably a few French words thrown in.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned about the ancient gods. Battles like the defeat of Vercingetorix and stuff like that. So it's all, which weirdly gets a mention in a short story I've been working on. So,
how random.
Again, all this stuff informs who you are.
It does.
Asterix. I've said before, the key for Asterix in the UK were the translations by Anthea Bell and Derek Hockridge, which put in all kinds of lovely puns and jokes that only the Brits would understand, that weren't in the French originals. And I think the lovely thing about Goscinny and Uderzo is they said to the people translating it, put your own jokes in, make it relevant to your own culture. Is another weird thing. When I was working at Orion, we got the rights to the Asterix books, and I went on a business trip to Paris to meet the families of Goscinny and Uderzo to talk about merchandising stuff in the UK. Wow. And the boardroom there as all the chairs are like the stone chairs that they have in the Gaulish village.
Brilliant.
So they're made of plastic, I think, or acrylic. But and the table looked like a big slab of stone. It was absolutely brilliant. Real
fantastic.
Joy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And Chris actually goes on to mention as well, favorite toy was my Commodore Amiga in 1987. My parents broke the bank for it, but I'd never have got into computers otherwise. Now, there's definitely a theme for us 80s and 90s kids. Computers, like, those were the days where all the home computers were just kicking off.
Wow,
I can
see one on your list. Tell us about yours.
My list is anyone who's ever had a computer with rubber keys knows what I'm talking about, folks. The ZX Spectrum. I got that one Christmas. It was more of a family gift because it was such a big thing at the time.
Yeah.
It was Christmas it came out. Clive Sinclair had created what was basically the first affordable home computer. And I believe it was 16 or 32K. And so just to kind of put that into perspective for our non-techie folks, when you think about a megabyte today, which is like 1/5 of an MP3 file, or maybe, a chunky, not even a second on a video. This was like 32K with an expansion pack that you could get up to 48K. I think the ZX80 preceded
ZX80, that was Spectrum. That was 16K, wasn't it?
16K. Utterly mind-blowing. Like, how do you even comprehend today when we talk about, hey, here's 2 gig of free space on whatever, Dropbox, Google, or send you WeTransfer files. And we were playing with a computer that could basically deal with like 48K at its kind of prime. Utterly mind-blowing. But what they managed to create on them, I don't know how they did it, but I remember getting Space Invaders one Christmas, Hungry Horace, which is like a version of Pac-Man, and playing them until I literally, was having very strange dreams at night.
Yeah, it's when you see them in your sleep, you've been playing.
Oh my gosh, yeah, utterly bonkers. Did you get a computer for Christmas, Mark? Was that something that kind of happened separately?
No, we never had. Like I say, my dad was a football referee. And he became secretary of the local refs association. And because of that, he had to do a newsletter. Mm-hmm. And Muggins here became his personal secretary. So he would handwrite the newsletter and I would type it up for him. Again, all typing skills. It really honed my typing skills. But it was a fire-damaged BBC B computer. Whoever had it before, the previous secretary, they'd had a fire in their house and soot had got, they said, oh, there's soot on it or something. And we didn't know how to repair it or anything. We just knew that it worked 90% of the time. And you'd be typing or playing a game and suddenly you get these blocks appear on the screen and you go, oh no, and you go, bang, and then the screen would clear and then you'd be okay again, which lasted so long. But we had, so it was a BBC B, so it had a pretty good memory, and we had a proper floppy disk drive as well, and we had loads of games. They gave us loads of games, which was great fun. So yeah, we kind of got a computer by accident, and that's how I learned to type. And I started writing stories on those, which were rubbish, but it was first step on the road to where I am now. So
It all starts somewhere, right? Absolutely. Brilliant stuff. Let's jump in with Angela Nurse. She sent us a really interesting one. She said, when I was 5, I got a toy basset hound that was lying in a lying down position and about as long as her. I'd seen him in the shop when I was out with my dad. I later found out that all my Christmas shopping had been done by my dad. But my dad got it for me anyway. Aww. Dads are great like that sometimes, aren't they? They're, especially with their daughters, little softies. His name is Patch, and he travelled back and forth from Fife to Penzance for school for 6 years, and still sits on a chair in my bedroom.
Wow!
And then she says, books-wise, I remember getting Agatha Christie books when she was 13 and feeling like a proper grown-up.
Nice. Yeah, murder. Books with murder in them. No one got murdered in the famous 5, did they? So you got proper murders in the Agatha Christie. Yeah, fantastic. Wonderful.
We're taking a quick break from the podcast to say Mark and I would love to become your coaches in the Bestseller Academy next year. Register by December 31st and we will meet you in January for craft and writer's life coaching. We can't wait to find out about your writing goals and are ready to support, inspire, and cheer you on to the end. We also have scholarships available, and the Academy is fully inclusive regardless of writing experience. So want to learn more and have a taster? Well, Mark and I have recorded a very special Writing Goals workshop, which is available for a limited time. Simply visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy to view the webinar now. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Go on then, Mr. Stay, pick another one off the list.
Right. Tom Foote. Tom says, I associate Christmas with telling stories, particularly those that are magical or ghostly. My first house was reputedly haunted Tudor cottage called, imaginatively, Tudor Cottage. So we would gather around the huge central fireplace to be regaled, particularly by my older half-sister, who always brought an inexhaustible supply of creepy tales to family festivities. Beyond that and Bible-y stuff, Christmas Carol was always a big hit, along with, don't judge me, my most prized gift of the complete Flower Fairies poems. Tom, no judgment here. We've told you we don't judge people on their reading material, whatever brings you joy and happiness. So yeah, fantastic.
Brilliant stuff. Jackie Kirkham said annuals, especially Beano annuals. Here we go.
Yep.
But she then says, one of my 21st century bugbears is that these days annuals are a total rip-off and they're only a third of the thickness. Those things would keep me occupied for hours when I was younger. But today you could read them cover to cover in no time at all. And they were just not the experience they were. Bah humbug, says Jackie. But it also, Jackie, might be something to do with you not being 8 anymore. I'm going to look back at them and think, what did I see in these? They're like...
I mean, this is the thing. You talk about the quality street tins. They're getting smaller. They don't have as many sweets in them as they did before. So there is
the downsizing of commerce.
You sit there and you think, hang on, is that just a perception of being a grumpy old person thinking that the olden days were better? But actually, it's true.
It's true.
You don't get as many chocolates.
It's a classic.
Annuals are shorter.
Yeah, and it's a classic thing they do in the world of commerce, because ultimately it's a kind of an illusionary thing. If you do look at, say, chocolate bar today and you put it against a chocolate bar of 20 years ago, they're completely different products. But it's all about, make the packaging bigger, but make what's inside it smaller ultimately. But very, very interesting. Pick another one, Mr. Stave.
Okay, let's go with Rachel. Rachel Howes. Rachel says, when I was a sprog, the classic Bunty annual was always exciting. I remember getting the books Heidi and The Secret Garden one Christmas. Classics, yeah. Must have been about 6. If I see a copy of either of them when I'm in a second-hand bookshop, I usually grab a copy. I don't know why, but I know I won't stop. I adored my Ladybird Well-Loved Tales books too. I've also begun collecting the originals of these, of which I have umpteen. I never remember which ones when I'm out. Note to yourself, take a picture of said collection. I mean, the Well-Loved Tales, the illustrations on the sort of classic editions of those are absolutely gorgeous. I follow an Instagram account. I've forgotten what it's called, but they have sort of daily images, paintings of those Ladybird Well-Loved Tales, and they're absolutely brilliant. But yeah, there's some great nostalgia there, Rachel.
And of course, the Ladybird books were then bought out more recently in a kind of was it Ladybird where they did the kind of adult formats?
Yeah, the adult ones. Yeah. Which did very well.
Which started off it felt like it started off an entire new thing at Christmas, which is who could actually create the most outrageous kids' books for adults. And Mr. Stay, I believe, and I'm just scanning my phone for it, I believe I found it the other day. It's the number 5 top-selling children's book of this year, but it's been written so that adults can have a bit of a chuckle, because all of the stuff that's actually very inappropriate goes, in theory, over the kid's head. And I want to show you the front cover of it. It's called Hookers and Blow, Save Christmas. And it's 2 There you go. You can see it there. It's two trucks. One's called Hooker, and it's a pickup truck that helps people get out of the snow when they get stuck. And Blow is the snowplow that helps to blow the snow away. So Hookers and Blow save Christmas. I shouldn't be promoting it because he's probably already sold 1 million copies of it. But when I saw that, it did make me laugh. It did make me laugh. It reminded me of the other one about trying to get your kids to go to sleep. And you probably know what that one is as well. But let's move on. And that kind of, actually, the whole Ladybird book stuff, they had lots of kind of early books. I can't really remember what I got when I was like really, really young, 3, 4. But definitely remember getting things like Enid Blyton books. And my sister was big into Enid Blyton. And actually, just referring quickly back to one of our earlier comments about the Snowman. We haven't talked about the Snowman. Raymond Briggs. That's right. Chris said anything by Raymond Briggs. That was a tradition in our house on Christmas Eve. We would always put the Snowman on. And we started it again because I realised over in Canada, people haven't seen or even heard of the Snowman.
Have you got British. Do you remember when it first came on? They had an introduction from David Bowie. I'm introducing the Snowman. Yeah,
I don't
the original.
Remember that.
Yeah, you got to look that up. Look that up on YouTube because he does an introduction about the Snowman for some reason on Christmas Day. That's my David Bowie impersonation.
It's very good.
Apologies.
It's very good.
Yeah.
It's but that always gets me. Doesn't matter how old I get. Whenever I watch a Snowman, always brings a little bit. Well, it's a hugely nostalgic thing to watch. If you haven't seen it, find it on somewhere.
We're walking in the air.
It's how it, no spoilers, but it's how it ends. It's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's Raymond Briggs, and that's what Chris was talking about, traumatizing people, because Raymond Briggs did wonderful stuff like The Snowman and Fungus the Bogeyman, but he also
Father
did
Christmas as well. Do you remember?
Father Christmas, yeah. But he also did Unlucky Wally, which is adults only, which is one of the most tragic picture books you will ever read. It's heartbreaking, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And of course, he did When the Wind Blows, which was about an elderly couple who get their Protect and Survive leaflet as nuclear war breaks out. So they follow the instructions in the Protect and Survive leaflet. And spoiler alert, they die. And it was made into an animated movie. And of course, people watched it because it was Raymond. Oh, is this like the Snowman? And it was no, it really, really isn't. It's got, again, David Bowie's song and Roger Waters' soundtrack.
Then. You can genre hop. And you can break all the rules, as Raymond did. I mean, amazing stuff. Richard Bat Brewster. Okay, you're giving us a list of 3 different things. Toys. Buckets of Lego. Of course.
Yes.
I can't believe it's taken this long to get Lego onto the podcast.
Buy the bucket.
And Star Wars figures, of course, including the Death Star and Millennium Falcon. Oh. You lucky, lucky man.
Yeah.
Books. Okay, now we're talking. You ready for this? Drum roll. Books. Choose Your Own Adventure and Fighting Fantasy. They have made an appearance on our show quite a few times, haven't they, Mark? Because they were both, we realised that was one of our favourite growing up. Fighting Fantasy books. Oh my gosh. They came, you had to get a dice and you had to get a pencil because you had that chart at the front of the book where you'd like put in your endurance and your strength, and when you'd fight the troll or whatever you'd bump into because you turned east instead of west. And I always remember like trying to find them secondhand, and it would be a delight, an absolute delight. The first thing I'd do, didn't matter what condition the book was in, I'd flick to that page where you'd have to write the scores down. And if it was completely annihilated, I'd be like, I can't get it. Can't get it. But great days. What was your favourite Fighting Fantasy book? Could you remember?
Oh, blimey. I mean, they all blur into one, don't they? Yeah.
They do. East, west, north or south, basically.
Yes, yeah.
It's just one continuation. Through the jungle.
Warlock on Firetop Mountain or something?
The Warlock on Firetop Mountain, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then the Death Trap Dungeon.
Death Trap Dungeon, yeah. The thing I remember is me and Dad would do them. It was something that me and Dad would do, and it was nice to have that little connection.
That's lovely.
The two of us doing
City of Thieves. Brilliant days.
Yeah.
And then the last one on the list, Richard says, best was various computers. Here we go. Listen to this list. C16, C64. They came with such inventive names, didn't they, back in the day? Amiga 500, that's a bit more like it. And the PC 386, which sounds like one of the very early PCs. Love it. Absolutely love it. Go on then, Mark. Dive in. What else have we got? We've got a ton more to get through.
Look, while we're talking about Star Wars, I'm going to go back to my list because Star Wars, as we all know, was huge in my life. And I desperately wanted a Millennium Falcon or a Death Star. Never got them. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter at all. I did get the Cantina and Jawa playsets, which were bits of molded plastic with a cardboard background.
Do you know what? I'm looking at the picture, Mark. Can we put these on our on the show notes for people to see? Maybe we'll put them on the social media. But looking at it, I thought you were about to say you got the Star Wars nativity scene. Because that's what it looks like.
It does.
It looks like, where's baby Jesus? Where's baby Jesus?
R5D5.
Where's Yoda? I mean, it's really interesting. It is, yeah, I can see it. It actually looks high quality with that kind of that cardboard background. Yeah, but everyone's there. You got CP3O. You got Luke. Sorry. You see, I can. Who's the guy on the right though?
That's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Is that Obi-Wan? He's looking very young.
Yeah, with his plastic cape. Yeah,
he's looking very young.
I mean, I used to, get the figure. The figures were like £1 then, or £1.50, and I would get money for Christmas or birthday, and we go to the Brent Cross shopping centre, which was the place that had them all, and blow all my money there. And I did get an X-wing, which was amazing. Nice. I did always want the Death Star, but I've as an adult, I look at it and see that it's basically two bits of cardboard and think, yeah, I can see why the American Death Star was much better. I'm talking about the Palatoy British Death Star. The American Death Star was actually a bit more interesting, but the Palatoy British one was basically a plastic circle with two bits of cardboard, and that was it. And I can appreciate why my parents thought, I'm not getting that crap for Christmas.
I love it, mate. You are such a Star Wars geek. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Talking of figurines, though, let's jump to Ian Sainsbury's, because Ian Sainsbury's has got something that's on my list.
Oh, yes.
All right, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Big drum roll. And I think people around the world are going to rejoice when they hear these words come out of my mouth. Evel Knievel wind-up bike thingy. Right, terrorizing the cat. I remember
off the top of the stairs.
If you didn't have if you had that and your house had wooden floors, utter genius. I had the carpet, and poor old Evel Knievel, he wouldn't even be able to get over one double-decker bus because he'd always kind of get stuck somewhere. But I do remember that, and it was the most bizarre toy I think that ever was invented. But it was huge, wasn't it? I remember it being like everyone had one almost.
Absolutely. And he'd, crash in a mangled heap. And he had this bendy body with wires in them. So
that's right.
He could look like he'd been broken.
Was kind of crazy because based on what was actually happening in his real life, the amount of I remember Evel Knievel had so many massive wipeouts, but it was kind of cool. It was kind of cool to have the actual kind of wind up figurine toy. And there were lots that kind of followed it, but there was never anything quite as magical.
They did reissue it years later, and I got one, and it was from a company called Firebox, and they had a competition saying, if you do a video with one of our toys, we'll feature on our website. And I did a video of Evel Knievel, which I edited together, of him crashing off our stairs, and it won that month's prize. I got some vouchers for that.
I love it. Yeah. Ian also says that he also got a bloody awful Janet Fraser skateboard, and the Gormenghast trilogy, which I remember was made into a BBC series, because I remember we had that set as well. And then Rachel has the best post of the day, I think, in response to Ian. She says, "Wow, Ian, you really surprised me. I thought your favourite would have been the stick and hoop. You just when you think you know somebody." So congratulations, Rachel, for the best troll comment. That was absolutely brilliant. But then, Mark, we see yet another appearance from Andrew Chapman.
His favourite book, The Beano Annual.
Beano album.
He says, I still have a stack of them somewhere. My folks never really got me books. We were more likely to get toolkits and penknives. Dad was a carpenter. And his most exciting toy was the Ghostbusters fire station. Oh, fantastic. Absolutely brilliant.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, the Beano Annual again.
Rosemary Deuce says that her favourite toys were anything My Little Pony related. And I remember reading the 101 Dalmatians one Christmas. It was my favourite children's book. And as an adult, I like to reread The Armourer's House by Rosemary Sutcliffe about a Tudor family. Description of their Christmas is lovely and very vivid. I have my mum's old copy from when she was a child. Isn't that lovely? It's currently out of print, but apparently it's being pre-printed next year. So
Wow.
that incredible. Again, talking about how books, certain types of books that are either given to you by parents or by relatives, have an extra special place in your heart, and how so many people have carried them on, maybe carried on that tradition of passing them on to their own children, or just like treasuring the copy that they have as something, as a special gift. And I love that. And that's, again, the power of a brilliant book.
Fantastic. Shell Vest says, I was very much a child of the America 80s. It was like a new doll every year. Strawberry Shortcake, Rainbow Bright, Care Bears, Cabbage Patch Doll. Then I'll have my Speak and Spell and puzzles. And we had an original Atari. For books one year, I got this beautiful illustrated hardback of Little Women. It's still one of my favourites. And once the family knew I was into Stephen King, I got lots of King hardbacks for Christmas and birthdays. Ooh, I hope they're first edition, Shell. Hang on to those.
Wow,
yeah,
that's brilliant.
Lynn
says, oh, go on, sorry, go on.
Well, it's just the American 80s. I mean, my sister, massive Care Bears fan. I remember, we had to struggle to find the right Care Bear, because if you got the wrong Care Bear, it was trouble. And we did get her a Cabbage Patch doll as well, which was called, his name was Jerry Dominic, I think, because they come with a little birth certificate. And each one was individual. So, yeah, she was...
Can I tell you a secret, Mark? Yeah. Cabbage Patch dolls absolutely freak me out.
Oh, no, I can, yeah.
You look at like Chucky and all these horror movies that have been made out. When I look at those things, they look like they should be in horror movies. That's just my own take. I mean, obviously.
No, you're right.
They were so popular, weren't they?
Cabbage Patch Dolls and Teddy Ruxpin. Did you ever come across the phenomenon of Teddy Ruxpin? No. Which was this teddy that was battery operated, and it had a cassette in its back.
Oh,
and
yes.
it was supposed to speak to you, and it would respond to, and of course, when the batteries ran out, I'm your friend.
Something completely out of a horror movie. Oh my gosh. And then the tape would get all mangled and come out of his mouth or something, right? Yeah. Nightmares. Oh my gosh, nightmares. Lynn says so many books she loved as a child. Enid Blyton again. The Faraway Tree, they're still popular actually. And the Moomins. Who can forget the Moomins? Haven't they redone the Moomins as a TV show?
And do you remember Mark Huckabee and Nick Osler, who were on the podcast? They write on the Moomins.
They write on
series.
the Moomins. Who knew? Yeah. Goodness me. And then Lynn also says what Katie did and did next. Heidi, Anne of Green Gables. That, I mean, in Canada, if you don't have Anne of Green Gables on your bookshelf, you aren't officially Canadian. They do. They'll kick you out of the country. I know she remembers a story about Helen Keller that she loved.
Right.
And every year when she was around 7, her godmother gave her a hardback book. Isn't that lovely? Godmother. Brilliant. And mostly it was the twins at St. Clair's, which is a favourite of all. But remember, one year it was Heidi with illustrated quarter-bound covers. And the best year of all, when she was 10, a children's illustrated encyclopedia. Now, that's something we've lost in this world of online, right? Do you remember the old encyclopedias? I mean, books. My parents had a whole, they obviously got done by the salesman that came around. Like 20 massive A to Z, like literally A was like
Encyclopedia Britannica. Was that?
It was the red covers, and I remember them falling apart because I used to pull them out and I just flick them open and randomly. It was the equivalent of doing a random Google whack or a Google search, wasn't it?
Well, I used to get. Maybe every year I used to get like an illustrated encyclopedia or whatever. And it was, and of course the Guinness Book of Records, let's not forget that, which is still going.
That's still going, yeah.
And you'd open that just at a random page and discover something amazing. And, they're absolutely brilliant gift, really, really great gift, because it just packs it expands your horizon, packs your mind with amazing facts, expands your horizons. They're terrific books. I love them.
They are brilliant. Now, being two middle-aged blokes, obviously there might be some females listening thinking, this is not very representative of. So I think we need to move on to what is known as the Sindy conversation.
Well, yes, Wendy Coth, who's Spotlight in one of our previous episodes, she says, my dad worked for a famous stationery brand, and every year would bring home stacks of pristine notebooks. I love the covers and remember the thrill of the blank pages. I still have some of those books, and I started writing stories, but also massive thanks to my favourite doll, Sindy. I could make up stories for her and her friends to act out, so I suppose she was my first character invention. The things she got up to. Then Angela chipped in. Angela says, Sindy was fab, wasn't she? Wendy says, sure was. Jackie said, I had Sindy too, tons better than Barbie. Rebecca says, oh yes, love Sindy. She even starred in one of my first fan fictions at the ripe old age of 7. Lynn says, I had a Tressie. You remember the one you could make her hair grow, except it got tangled, so I cut it all off. Always wanted a Sindy. Now, Claire is a big Sindy fan as well. And it was very much Sindy was the alternative for British girls, mostly girls. I expect a few boys had them. For British girls who, thought Barbie was, just maybe too American or just too weird with those incredibly long legs. And Sindy was a bit more rounded as well. She wasn't like stick thin. She had curves, and Sindy just felt maybe a bit more relatable. And I did some looking up on this. I was looking up the whole story of Sindy, and because she kind of lost in the doll wars. In
doll
Barbie,
wars.
Was just doll wars. In the Barbie was just absolutely ubiquitous and everywhere. And she went out of business, but Sindy is back. Sindy is back. There's a whole website and everything. So do check out Sindy. But Barbie, if you there's a series on Netflix called The Toys That Made Us, and there's a whole episode about Barbie. And do check it out, because it's so weird, because it started, there was as a German doll, and it was a doll that men would give to women whom they fancied. And they'd say, here's a doll, will you come out with me for dinner? And the doll looked a lot like Barbie, but had nipples on her boobs, which Barbie doesn't have. And the woman who essentially invented Barbie in the States saw this doll, took it back to America and said, we can do something with this as a fashion doll. Take the nipples off and take away the creepy man gift-giving thing. And a legend was born. It is absolutely fascinating. The whole Barbie history is really, really fascinating. But Sindy, big thumbs up for Sindy. She was the big alternative here in the UK.
I tell you what, folks, the things you learn on this podcast, I bet you didn't realise. I now know what the title of this podcast is going to be. That's awesome. Let's move on. We referenced this earlier, but here we are. Natalie Perry says, my mum used to put out a bowl of Quality Street around the house at Christmas. And I would always ask for a book each year that I'd chosen after a trip to London. Oh, how brilliant is that? Trip to London, picking out a book. Partway through the day, I would steal one of the bowls of Quality Street and find a quiet place to sit. Didn't we all? It was where could you hide the wrappers? And would find a quiet place in the house to sit and read my book and eat more chocolate than any young person really should. It was my own little Christmas ritual. I loved it. And trying to get, obviously pick out the round flat toffee one, trying to pick that out from the teeth. I've spent the rest of the day. She said, Christmas and books and reading are so linked in my head. I always thought I was hiding, but my mum and dad, being very encouraging readers, as I realise now, were probably giving me time to myself. So that's a brilliant story. And again, how it all ties in again with books and chocolate, and a little nook somewhere tucked away, reading and disappearing off into an adventure world. This, folks, is what you create when you write books. Absolutely brilliant. Love it.
That's wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Do you want to go back to one from your list, Mr.
Yeah, let's
D?
pick one off my list. I've got quite... I mean, from a computer side, there was this thing called Astro Wars.
Yes! I had Astro Wars.
Did you have
I
it?
did.
I loved it.
It's brilliant.
I played that so much. It's basically, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it was a little kind of mini console. And it was kind of like a version of Space Invaders, and it made lots of bleepy noises, but it had a little joystick, like a tiny, slightly bigger than a matchstick, and a big button that you hit to fire. And I just loved that. It was like
having an arcade game in your home.
It was like the next best thing, wasn't it? And it was kind of the first one of its kind, I think, as well.
Importantly, it had a AC adapter, because if it ran on batteries, this is what kids today don't realize they're born. Anything back in the 80s that ran on batteries, first of all, batteries cost twice as much and lasted half as long. Yeah. So you'd put that in, and by lunchtime, it's gone, finished.
To the cheer of parents everywhere driving their car to grandma's, right? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I got, and this was my mum and dad was so cheeky, they couldn't go through Christmas without doing a prank on me. And I remember one Christmas, I think I was about 6 or 7, I remember we got to that end of the unwrapping of presents and we had what we know as the stack. Everyone knows what that is, right? It's stack. And I looked across at my sister, who was 2 years older than me, and her stack was literally 3 to 4 times larger than mine, which in my world meant that I'd obviously done something wrong or my sister was a favourite. And I was in that really weird kid-like space of trying to be really grateful and happy about all the lovely things I got, but feeling desperately sad that like my sister got like loads more than I did, like properly big presents. And my dad said to me, Mark, he said, can you go pop out to the car? I've got some bin liners in the boot of the car. That's a trunk for our North American listeners. Grab some bin liners for the Christmas wrapping paper. We have to tidy up. And so he sent me out there and I was like, oh. So I slunk off outside, popped open the boot, and there, filling the entire boot, was a race and chase set. Basically a kind of a cops and robbers car chase set, like a Scalextrics, basically.
Wow.
And it was the thing I most wanted, and they got it for me, and I'll never forget that. Firstly, the trauma they put me through, but then the joy of finding that toy in the back of the car. Brilliant. And it had a little jumping ramp and everything. If anyone ever had one of those, they were absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic.
Race
and chase.
Brilliant. So we're coming towards the end of the show, folks, but let's have a quick dive in with Laura Shepherd, who said, I love books, Animal Farm books. Remember the Animal Farm series, Mark? Mm-hmm. They were huge. I think very, very big in North America as well. Harry Potter. Oh, slightly younger listener like that. Anything and everything. Narnia, Middle-earth. Presents she'll never forget, science kit that made crystals. We all had one of those at some point, didn't we? And a pottery wheel. That's something you don't often hear. A pottery wheel. Yeah. Maybe inspired by... parents had seen Ghost or something like that. And a mosaic kit. Yeah. And a mosaic kit. My poor parents. That is quite the random selection, Laura. That's absolutely fantastic. And Mark, Robin, what did Robin get for Christmas?
Robin said, when I was little, Lego, books and horses. Now, I'm sure they weren't real horses. Maybe they were. I don't know. But Robin says, as I got older, more books, less Legos, still horses. Once I hit university, books and stationery. I got a Palomino Barbie horse one year. My dad told me to name him Flicker from the book. So my horse was Flicker, which I thought was perfect because he had gold flecks in his long mane and tail. Years later, I found and read the book My Friend Flicker, and I realised that it was who my dad meant all along, Flicker, not Flicker. And that is the story of how I learned my dad had a New Zealand accent. Lovely.
Brilliant. And then to wrap things up, 2 things. Lynn Clark, she mentions 2 words that I haven't heard in years. Yeah. So thank you, Lynn. The words are fuzzy felt. Who can forget fuzzy felt? And Mark, we've left the best till last because I want you to announce Julian Barr's picture, being a fan.
Just pause on fuzzy felt, because fuzzy felt, again, these stories have an amazing background because it basically came out of the Second World War, because the people who invented fuzzy felt, they used to make gaskets for tanks. Okay. And they discovered they had all this leftover felt, and they made little shapes out of them and they gave them to local children. And that's how a legend was born.
Oh my gosh.
I remember fuzzy felt. It's
fuzzy felt. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Wonderful stuff. And to end up with, let's dive into Julian Barr before we finish up with our presents. Julian Barr, what was his favourite present as a kid?
It's the best present I ever got as a kid, and it's an AMT Ertl USS Enterprise Command Bridge model kit. So, this is the bridge of the Enterprise that you put together with glue. Now, were you any good with sort of Ertl or Airfix or any of that stuff? Because basically I just ended up with a massive pile of glue.
I didn't have the patience for it. I did love puzzles. I mean, we have to mention Christmas puzzles, obviously, but kits was not a big. My dad loved to build model aircraft, so that was his thing. But they were slightly bigger than the tiny kits that you have to put together. But I think anyone with dogs or cats, it was just a no-go, wasn't it? Because if you left it out for the night, you'd wake up in the morning and be like, my model smashed up. Brilliant stuff. Oh my goodness. Well, and what's left on your list, Mark? Have you got anything left on your list? I see something.
Let's talk about. Can we do Jeff White's one? I know it's a long one, but I'll whiz through it. I want to go through Jeff's, because Jeff White says, He says, the very best Christmas present I ever received was the year I got an off-road motorbike. My dad and I were mad for motorbikes. We spent one Christmas down at my aunt's farm, sitting around the open fire. All the presents had been opened. Then my mum said, oh, look, there's one more under the tree. I think it's got your name in it, Jeff. There was a little red cardboard box, square and a bit bigger than a matchbox, that had gone overlooked in the frenzy of wrapping paper destruction. I fetched it out, and it did indeed have my name in it. I opened it, and inside, on a little leather key ring, was a pair of keys with Yamaha written on them. I didn't quite get it. I couldn't quite bring myself to believe what it might represent. The keys must fit something. Let's have a look and see if we can find it. Out I traipsed, eyes wide as saucers, and there, in an outbuilding under a dust sheet, was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. A Yamaha TY125 Trials bike, old but in very good condition. My brother was pissed off. He got a watch. But
Sounded like me, the race and chase set. What a brilliant story.
I mean, the classic present for Christmas was the bike. And for me, I see you've got a racer on yours.
I do, a rally racer. Yeah,
rally racer. Rally was the brand, wasn't it?
Rally was the brand.
I mean, for races, it was either Rally or Peugeot. But I got a Rally Burner BMX. Which,
you're a BMXer?
Yeah, with the mag wheels, of course, which I got one Christmas when I was horribly sick. I was over the moon to get it. It was a Rally Burner in white with a black trim. I was horribly sick, but I was determined to ride it. So I went, and this is when my parents were caretakers of a school. So I went out onto the playground with my bike, pedal, 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 blah, pedal, pedal, pedal,
no.
blah, puking as I went. Best Christmas ever. But that Rally Burner was an absolutely brilliant bike. It was, it was fast, it was light, you could do all kinds of tricks on it, and I didn't break any bones. So
amazing, absolutely amazing. Yeah, mine was the Rally. It was the Rally speed bike. And I always remember just whizzing up and down. We grew up in a cul-de-sac, which was awesome for going. It's for like not too many cars, so you could zoom up the road and you go round the circle and zoom down and you see how quick you could make it. And then the other thing that I had, my dad went to Japan once on business, and this was back in the early 80s, and he came back with the most amazing present ever. Like, you were hoping maybe for some weird Japanese sweets that you'd never seen. He actually gave me and my sister these little tiny handheld Nintendo game. I don't even know what you call them. They're handheld. They're kind of the original kind of like pre.
It's the Game & Watch. The Game & Watch.
It's the Game & Watch. Thank you. The Game & Watch. They had one game on it. Do you remember those two red buttons? Game A and Game B. And the one he got me was called Chef, and it was basically this poor guy who basically had to keep tossing food up, and there was a little cat with a fork that would try and grab your banger if you didn't get it, and a little mouse that would grab it. And these things were the most addictive games ever. You would play them forever, and you'd have a high score. And I remember the moments when you'd be going for long drives and stuff, and you'd be trying to beat your high score, and you'd be getting really close, and your hands would be getting really sweaty, and then someone would nudge you, and you'd miss the pancake or whatever, and the game, you'd lose your third life, and the game would be over, and you'd be like absolutely in a foul mood for the rest of the trip to grandma's. And it was just those games. Did you ever have one of those?
I don't think I did. I think my cousin Robert did, and I remember playing it. And it was that thing as well where it, as the battery went, it would fade as well. So you had the little character, and he sort of batteries become this grey ghost moving left and right as it was trying to catch things.
Trying to get your high score.
Holding it at an angle so you get the sunlight on it. Yeah, because it's a little LCD screen.
Great day. So I know a lot of people are going to be thinking, of course, Game & Watch, how can we forget? And there was all kinds of knockoff versions of it. I had one called Prison Break, but it was literally, it was so simple. And you look at like today, you look at what you can online gaming, VR headsets. How far have we come? I mean, this is utterly, but still going back to the 80s, those games, it was all in the gameplay, and they were all addictive and no silence or mute. So poor parents had to listen to these plinky plonky noises all day long. Must have been absolute hell on earth.
Well, I had plinky plonky noises. My last one on my list is a board game called The Generals. And I can remember even now, I found the picture online, and it was like chess for idiots. You basically have these two armies facing each other, and you move them across the board. And then when they meet each other, you put them on this electronic sort of battle thing on the left, and it made a noise. It went... I've forgotten it now. It's gone completely blank. But it was a bit like diddly dee diddly dee diddly dee dee. And one of you, depending on your rank, one of you won, one of you lost. And yeah, absolutely love that. But yeah,
I love the way on the box
annoying
cover,
noise.
if you can find a picture of this online, folks, of the General's electronic strategy game. I love on the cover, it has like a little speaker and it's like representing sound coming out by these little waves. Absolutely.
As a warning to parents everywhere.
It looks like a bit like Guess Who gone wrong. Do you remember Guess Who? That was a big Christmas thing as well.
Yeah.
Battleships was another one. Do you remember Battleships?
Yeah, of course,
oh my gosh, yes.
Spawned a mega movie as well.
I love it.
Before we wind up, your bike, how many gears? Do you remember that was the important thing? How many gears did you have?
That's a very good question. I think it was 15, like it had a 3 and a 5 cog, which was quite high for that. Yeah, that was
very good.
Because I think sometimes
got a 10 speed.
10 speed, I remember even 3. Do you remember like there were 3 gear bikes as well?
Yeah.
Great days. But I've always wanted to almost buy another one just to, I mean, they look so fragile when you go on the roads nowadays with potholes and all kinds. But
and I bet they're really heavy as well compared to some bikes.
Yeah. Although you can get some now that you can literally pick up with one little finger.
Well, you know Howard and Asa, don't you? Because they cycle. Friends as well from school. I met them a few years ago, and they both came to the pub on their bicycle. Yeah. It was the night you came over in the UK.
It was the night,
and you could, one finger. Yeah. And Asa recently for charity went from Land's End to John O'Groats, didn't he?
He did, on his bike.
Did the whole country. Astonishing.
Absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. So I hope this episode has brought back a lot of nostalgia for all of you. And whether it was bikes, computer games, ultimately, really, Christmas and nostalgia was always around the stories that we heard, whether it was things that we heard from our relatives who came over and scared the bejeebers out of us, things that our parents told us about their life, all the stories that we read, they are all so deeply entrenched in everything that we've done since. And I think it's something to really be aware of as writers about the magic that you create when you build these stories, because the theme, the tradition continues, folks. And how many books have been bought this Christmas? Like, how many millions of kids are going to be opening, presents and seeing a book that in 20, 30 years in time they'll be reminiscing about? Absolutely brilliant. We're all part of that kind of big kind of paying it forward by continuing to write. So get on it, folks. Keep on writing. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So, Mr. Stay, last thoughts for Christmas?
Hope it's a nice, peaceful Christmas with your family. As you say, telling stories. My family, once they got a few jars in them, you heard all sorts of stories. So it was very educational. And have a lovely time and see you in the new year.
Absolutely. We can't wait to be with you in 2022. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this show. This show is dedicated to all of you and our lovely listeners, all the brilliant stories that not only you've written this year, but you have told us about, that you've written in and told us about, how writing is changing your life, how this podcast has helped. One thing that somebody said on there once, which has changed the way you look at your life and the way that you write. We're so grateful for all of you for being a part of this amazing bestseller experiment family. And we look forward to hearing all more of your stories next year.
And before I forget, thank you to everyone who sent in their Christmas memories and their favourite toys and books.
Absolutely. We might have to do this as a little tradition, maybe, Mr. Stay.
I think so.
Around Christmas time. I loved it. Brilliant stuff. Yeah. So, with this Christmas outro music playing in the background, it's a goodbye and a very, very happy Christmas and a wonderful new year, folks, from Mark 1.
And a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from Mark 2. Merry Christmas.
Goodbye. Bye. Merry Christmas, everyone. Take care.